Yes, sir. And we are back. Episode number 6. We today, all three of us are here. Kunal nearly missed it because he was late. Um, Emily was about to pronounce him dead. So we today are going to expand on the stuff that we spoke about Diwali last weekend, go into a bit more about the Asian culture and the comparisons between that, the Scandinavian culture and the British one as well, and go into various different avenues of why are we helping people in our own fields, but also the take homes that need to be addressed. And Kunal's got some great thoughts on the Asian culture, so we're going to kick it off there. So it's really interesting and understanding and knowing Kunal for a long time, why he does what he does. So let's just start there. Kunal, why do you do what you do?
Appreciate the intro. Firstly, British culture. You're a Scouse lad. There's no such thing as a British culture. It's Scouse culture only.
Mushy fucking peas, like.
Let's fucking have it. But basically, for me, it was a case of education from a young age. Like, yeah, we all work hard at Asian culture, and most Asians, whether it's Bengalis, Pakistanis, Sri Lankans, Indians, all work hard in just the aspect of work, and they take their job and career very, very seriously, including us guys right now. But growing up, no one ever took fitness very, very seriously. And the cases of diabetes was on the rise, blood pressure, and it was like a token. If you had some of those, like you'd mention, oh, yeah, I've got diabetes, and people have a smile on their face, right? And it was one of those things when I was growing up, maybe when I was like 11, 12 years old. And this is when, you start becoming more aware of like conversations and people are like diabetes, all that kind of stuff. And I was about to choose my like GCSE subjects, and one of them was obviously sports science. And one of my reasons for choosing firstly sports science as like one of my GCSEs, and eventually, this becoming my career, but with one subject that kind of changed my whole dynamic. And it was because of growing up, firstly with my parents and my mom, etc. It was very much like you just eat whatever you want, and that was it. There was no education around this is protein, this is carbs, this is fats. Like I think a lot of people now are very lucky, just the amount of information that's available. Obviously back then, internet was slowly on the rise. It wasn't anything like crazy. You just mainly go on your textbooks and then you have a look at it, and that's it. So for me, it was growing up and seeing people, having diabetes, blood pressure, loads of different diseases, and being okay with it. And I was like, how can you be okay with this? Because you may be dying very, very shortly. But then it was a very much like a token of like, oh my God, I'm taking this amount of pills. It's like a symbol basically. And for me, I think when I got about 15, 16 years old, leaving basically college, or no, leaving high school and then going into college. And it's when I really like decided, first it was with athletes, but then I quickly realized, I can still make a huge impact on my own people. And one of the reasons why, like I really, and growing up as well into like 18, 19 years old, I never saw Asian transformations, or I never saw anyone like really transform, because Asians in general have this perception of like genetics. How many times we've heard that all the time, right? I'm vegetarian, I can't get results. Yeah. And I love, myth busting basically, and just saying, yeah, we'll see about that. But just seeing that over the years, from education and then lack of belief in terms of I can't do this because of my genetics and my nutrition, and then going into actually doing that and transforming people in that realm, and then seeing that domino effect with their own kids, I think is only going to be like, it's generational in my opinion. I think it's quite powerful as well. But yeah, for me, I think it's the lack of education from the very get-go, and then just slowly seeing that improving now, obviously with the rise of the internet. So the good side of social media, in my opinion, has allowed us to kind of people to be more aware about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely, and I've seen it plenty in my time as well. And does that I don't know the specific word for where it's like it's great, but it's also not too great. Like the cultural representation of what a good family, a good person is, a good health of a person, isn't represented in the actual physiological health of someone else. It's very much a externally judged version of health. Let's say, if you're skinny, you don't look like you've been fed well, and then your wife gets a good ear lashing because she's not been feeding you well. That's a common one, right? But there's a sign of fatness or chubby cheeks, as a sign of great health, whereas actually if we know that, you know, chubby cheeks doesn't directly correlate to to not healthy or healthy, but reality is you've probably got chubby cheeks, you've probably got a chubby belly at the same time as well, for the most part. And we know that, you know, obesity and body fat levels have a significant impact on your ability to be healthy. So there's that, obviously, that big disparity there where people are like, you know, the older generations are saying you need to look like this, and then the newer generations and the people that are concentrated on their health are like, no, 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 you need to do this. And then what they find is that they do one or the other, and then when they go one way, something else is compromised, and then they swing back the other way, and then they swing back the other way. So, you know, one of their grandparents at a social event says, you know, you need to eat more, or you're looking, you know, you're looking good, and then next minute they look in the mirror and they're ashamed of themselves. You know, who's right and who's wrong? Is it my culture? Is it nature versus nurture? Is it my auntie doesn't know what great is? Or is it that these people have got, you know, what health is wrong, and my auntie knows better than I do, or my mum knows better than I do? And that often internal debate is taxing mentally, but also you're just left in that mid ground of the same mid ground that every person is in when they're like, what diet shall I do? Shall I do keto? Shall I do high carb? Shall I do low carb? Shall I go and take juice plus? It's like mid ground where people are pulling you in so many different directions that you do nothing, or you swing from one end of the pendulum to the other, and either one of those are not conducive to anything productive in life, or long lasting results.
Yeah.
But and then from that side, it's like, how was your culture different to that, and how is the Scandinavian culture? All I kind of know is you know, meatballs and blonde women. So, you know, I'd love to be educated.
Yeah, tall blonde women with big boobs. That's I just didn't get any of them. I didn't get any of the traits. So obviously the Swedish, or I say the Scandinavian culture in general, it's a very sporty culture. We all do sports when we're kids. We get taught some nutrition in school, but it's definitely not to the extent where it's educational enough for you to know the difference between a healthy, balanced diet, because they just teach you the plate, right? And you say this should be this should be that, and a little bit of this, but it doesn't obviously teach you when it's applicable and when it's not applicable, or whether you need more of something or less of something. So, you know, it pulls everyone under the same and with the same line there. And yeah, but I think just to tie it into do like why I do what I do and how it became so important to me, it's because I've been the white skinny fat girl. And I think for a lot of women especially, but also for men, of course, it's the whole thing about not liking who you see. But also I think as a result that becomes you questioning whether you like who you are. And so the way that I look at fitness and why I really got into it myself is because I saw the absolute fantastic transformation that happens mentally when you apply yourself to going to the gym just regularly and actually doing something physical. So when I work with people, you know, it's about empowering people to get into that place of, I see the benefits of everything that I do, even though it's hard. I want to keep doing it because I can see how it has a massively positive translation into all the other areas of my life. And so, yeah. And I guess being a woman, you know, we have so many insecurities when we grow up. There's like this ridiculous, we could just do a whole podcast on insecurities, you know, but it's a tough one. So I think that when we start doing the resistance training and then obviously having a full body transformation and learning about nutrition, learning about how we work with nutrition and training, we can then actually see that it has a huge empowering effect in any area. And that's why I do what I do, because I want people to like thrive in all their other areas. Of course, like the visuals and the health and the benefits, like that's super important. But when people can link that to the rest of their life, because there is the like direct correlation between health, fitness, and your life, that's just the journey I want to take people on.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, one thing you mentioned there in that segment was nutrition. In you learned it when school, or you there's some sort of element to that taught. Could you dive deep into that? Exactly what it was like being taught? Because obviously, I'm just thinking about now, and I obviously mentioned education from the very beginning. No, I'm pretty sure Nate wasn't even taught anything apart. We were all like very much like, if you're curious, you start like searching for it and you start understanding more about it. Um, do you think that's the barrier for like the reason why, let's say, Asian culture now, but even let's say even the British culture right now, why obesity is on the rise, and even in America, it's because obviously nutrition is not getting taught. But even if it's the bare minimum, do you think that could still impact someone out there who's 10 years old or 12 years old going forward?
Well, if I remember correctly from like the lectures, if I would say to my teachers today, they were probably being correct in the teachings. And a lot of the time we were ended up baking, so it's like, oh, we're going to teach you healthy eating, but we're like going to bake scones today. It's like, so I don't think the education in terms of nutrition was very adequate, but it did, obviously, they do try to reinform like having a balanced meal and what that means. But yeah, I wouldn't say that there is a level of education in school that is enough anywhere in the world, I think. Yeah.
I probably, I 100% agree with that, but I also don't think that's where the work needs to go. I've seen it time and time again, and I'm of this bias as well, is that you are, or you become effectively your environment and the people that you spend the most of the time with. Now, it's not the whole sum of 5 people that you're around. It's just like, it's your environment, and you will mimic, especially as a child, the behaviors of people that you're around, like your parents. And I firmly believe that the actions of parents will be the things that the kids mimic and mirror as appropriate, and like the barrier for what's appropriate and not appropriate. That's why I say very stupid things all the time, because my dad isn't appropriate, and I can blame that on him. But there is that line where children will look for the barriers on either end, what is appropriate or what they can get away with, and then what is like the lowest form that can get away with without having to do more. And the environment and the culture, the parents and the upbringing is the most quintessential thing that you can get. Like, if your parents haven't taught you jack squiddly, or they still cook for you when you're 18, 21, 24, you still live at home, no wonder you can't control your eating. No wonder you don't know what right is from wrong, because you've been spoon-fed until you're in your mid-20s. It's crazy. Like, I've cooked from the ages of 16 onwards, because I knew my thought was diet is nutrition, not nutrition is nutrition. So I did a diet when I was 16, and that just evolutioned into me understanding about diet and nutrition, but not just nutrition. I just followed what my parents were doing, which was various different meat sauces and sauce jars every single evening, and had a sandwich for lunch as always, and a pack of biscuits at 4. But if you've been spoon-fed from, and it is spoon-fed, like, we can't even get away with that. Yeah, the reality is, if someone else is cooking your meals for you, if someone else is putting it on a plate for you, and you don't know what that is, and of course convenience is amazing, of course them doing that out of love is amazing for you, that's no dispute. But if you don't know, then you don't know, and that will then lead you into a bit of a pit of, like, if you don't understand, you can't act, you can't make decisions. If you don't educate, if there's no education, you can't make a decision. If you can't make a decision, you'll just do what's easiest, and then the easiest is not going to be the healthiest or the calorie controlled variation.
Yeah.
So
can I give you an anecdote on that?
Yes, please.
So neither of my parents enjoyed cooking, and my father is a very picky man when it comes to food. Like, he doesn't eat vegetables. And my mom, she will say she hates cooking with passion. Like, she will avoid the kitchen. She would probably starve if she didn't have a partner, or me being at home now when I'm in Sweden. I hope she doesn't listen to this podcast. But anyway, so the diet I grew up on, it was very carb heavy, no vegetables, a little bit of protein on the side, but it was very much like 60% carbs and 20% protein, and then like some fats from dairy, most likely, because Sweden is a heavily dairy like induced country.
Shout out to our sponsor, Ski.
Yeah.
When you sponsor Fitness Pump 10, that's the discount.
To draw it back, the way that I learned cooking, I didn't know how to cook, and I would always say myself, like, it actually was a time in my life where I was like, I hate cooking, I don't like cooking, I can't cook. And obviously that was my belief system. But then came my very first diet prep. What happened was I was forced to take responsibility and to be like, okay, cool, now I have these macros I need to hit. All right, how do I hit them? And I can tell you, like, in the beginning, it was really boring food, but then eventually I was like, oh, actually, you can experiment with this. it doesn't have to be broccoli and chicken breast. It could be a whole array of things by just hitting the same macronutrients. And I think when it comes to then food, it's really about trial error, as we've said in the past, and then being a bit curious about, oh, how can I make this taste nice, but still making sure that I fulfill my needs and actually get the requirements in. And but I think that comes back to taking full responsibility of where you are today and where you want to go. And if it is on a transformation journey, then that is the main responsibility that someone has to take.
Yeah. That's great. Extreme ownership is the way forward on that one. I think that's where, if we're then going to link it back to the Asian culture, a lot of people that I've dealt with, and Kunal, you can go on this, is that they have someone else cooking for them for a very long period of time, right?
100%. I mean, that's like a very generational thing as well. It's not just like, now it's changing, in my opinion, because the woman is not cooking as much for the guy, because like I said, 2 working lives, and they're like, I'm doing this and doing that. So the guys take ownership of that. Back in the day, I'm thinking 60s, 70s, 80s, etc. It was women in, like I say, I'm from Africa, I'm from Kenya. I know for a fact that my grandma did not go to work. So she basically cooked, and they cooked for the whole family, and they all lived together. And then all they did was just, here's your plate, you're going to eat this. And they knew exactly what they're eating, but it was never like, I don't want to eat this today. It was just, you ate what was given to you. So you just become so automatic, and you become, you're in this kind of situation, you're just not aware of what's going on. And even, in my opinion, to this day, like with kids, I won't say kids, but like guys in their 20s, 30s, we've seen them, right?
Yeah.
My mom cooks for me, but I have no clue what's happening with that food. It's just, I've been having that food for like the last 29 years of my life. So it just becomes so automatic. It's like, oh, I'm going home from work, mom's already cooked me dinner, and that's it. It's all done.
Isn't it a little bit of like a catch-22, like where you also don't want to disrespect someone who pays time to cook for you, but then you don't, like, it's a hard one, because obviously you want to be grateful for being fed and having someone there willing to do it, and actually most likely does it out of love. But then where do you then draw the line of like, okay, I need to take responsibility, but I also need to show respect and love for the people that I'm living with potentially. What's the solution to this?
So I've got a story to this, but I want to say the answer to that first. I think that the answer has to, again, come out of love, to say to that person that is cooking you the food, like, I really appreciate you doing this. I know that you do it out of love, but the food that you don't need to say it in these words, but in no uncertain terms, the food that you're eating is making me fat. So what we need,
if you want me to live longer,
if you want me to live longer and not get type 2 diabetes, we need to go down from 6 rotis down to 1 per meal. But then again, that's the answer. The answer is that if that is your cultural needs, and that is your family needs, and actually having your food on the table probably makes you better because you're automated in your day. You don't have to think about it. At the end of the day, who's going to say no to food being not showing up on their plate at 6 p.m. every single day? That would be great. But there has to be a point where you say, okay, well, what can we change, or what can we swap in this meal that you're currently making? Because everyone has habits, everyone has a diet, whether they like it or not, everyone has a routine, whether they like it or not. So it may be mung dal and rice on one day, next day maybe chili paneer, next day maybe I don't know, palm. It could be dossers in Italy, it could be whatever it wants. You know what I mean? You could have all the arrangement of meals, pav bhaji on a Friday or whatnot. But the reality is that if you want those foods, you can always have them. You just have to take them in the moderation and understand the food that you're being given. And if you understand that 40 grams of mung dal dry weight isn't particularly that much in terms of food volume, but is quite a lot in calories, the portion sizes that you'll be given or should be utilizing should be smaller, and then a representation of that in your day-to-day meals. So I think an easy solution to that is that if you want to keep that food utilization strategy, or that food strategy for that meal, you would just work out a portioned amount that works for the calorie needs. Like, at some point, if you're wanting to get in really good shape, you're probably going to have to manage the variables a bit closer, probably take away some of the other foods and manage it with a lower calorie allowance. But that 80% of the way there will just get done by just monitoring your portion sizes, and you don't need to do anything drastic with that. And just know that you might not like having one roti or two roti with the food. You might not like not having rice and roti. You might have to have one or the other, and it may be just a compromise in the middle for now until you've finished your dieting phase, and that's how you would run it. That's how I would run it anyway. A lot of people do it the other way, so there's that way, but then the other way is they just take complete control over their eating, and they take complete control of the kitchen, and then they start from that journey that you just spoke about making bland ass food, getting loads of criticism from their family members saying, why are you making these corn pieces taste like crap, or why are you not making it with in a curry sauce, or why are you not making it with all of these seasonings and whatnot. But that's where you start your journey, and I know plenty of people that have took that complete ownership, made that transition, started at the bottom, and now we're here.
Hey, shout out. I think one thing to add to that as well, it would be like meal hygiene. Because I can give you my example with my brother. So my brother, when he was young, would eat super slow. And you see my brother like as a stick. And then you saw me, like, let's say when I was like 15 years old, I was chubby because I used to finish my meals in 2 minutes. So I'd have like 3 to 4 rotis, and then I'd have my curry, I'd have my rice on top of that, and I'd be done. But it would be like a competition with, I don't know why, but I'll be like, yeah, let's see, finish this first quick. And I'd be one who's finished, but I didn't realize I was bloated. I couldn't eat again. And then I'd be hungry again, but also bloated. It was just like a weird feeling. So I think even if you can manage, let's say, meal hygiene and what Nathan mentioned about just portion sizes, I think that's a great start to any journey. But obviously portion sizes and meal hygiene takes time, because if you spend your whole, let's say 20 years of your life just chowing down food and not realizing like what how you feel, etc., and you feel bloated. Some people don't even know they feel bloated. It's just, oh, I'm just big, right? I just feel like this is my
chronic state of bloat, so they don't know the difference. That used to be me as well, So
there is always, and a lot of people struggle with that portion control way, because there's that other thing as well where a lot of people in that community, there's always one in the family. There's always one in British family as well, is they identify as a big eater. And once you have that, which used to be me, and I've dealt with a lot of people like this, where they wrap themselves up in that facade of eating big at every single meal, being the one with the biggest amount on their plate, but then in reality, there's a large fall from grace when you look at what you need to be doing to maintain your body weight and not yo-yo diet all of the time. And it can be hard when you've built up this 10 years of I'm going to eat the biggest thing on the menu. Like ultimately your eyes are drawn to what's the biggest thing on the menu every single time, because you feel like you've got something to prove, whether you know that or not. It is that. And the challenges that you face is that every single time you have a meal, you're left disappointed because you're like, well, I could have had double of that.
Yeah,
but also don't take away the value of adding vegetables to your plate to make it look a lot more fulfilling that it is. Like, honestly, if people can just, instead of thinking I have to take away, going like, okay, I'm going to add more vegetables, first of all, it's going to look like a whole lot, and then it's going to feel like a lot more because it's going to be fiber lying in your stomach, taking longer to digest. So I think that was my, I was eating, if I actually told you what I was eating when I was like 12, 13, it's ridiculous. But well, it would be cereal for breakfast or toast with cheese. And then obviously whatever was in school lunch, because we get fed in school. And then afterwards I would come home and I would make 2 packs of noodles or just macaronis with ketchup, loads of ketchup. And then we would have something for dinner that would also be like super carb heavy, like a pasta. And but then, as my, I guess, because I had 2 brothers, and I always got the same portions on my plates since a very young age. So my idea what a portion should look like was obscured, and it probably still is in a bit, but I've learned to like change the dynamic of the food and be like, cool, here's my vegetables, because they need to have a space on that plate. And then all of a sudden you don't have that much more space for like the carby stuff, and then you're making sure that you have that protein in there. So it's like it's sometimes just creating a visual that will make you perceive that it's a lot more food than it actually is. That's a good strategy as well, to overcome that idea of it needs to be a full plate of something. It could be a full plate, just make it vegetables as well,
or make it a starter plate.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, I eat out of a bowl all the time because it's just good. It's a good way to manage things.
Yeah, there's obviously I got the daily emails from Atomic Habits yesterday and got it forwarded on to me, And one of the biggest things they talk about, obviously, is that it's something that we speak about a lot. They're probably copying us. Is the level of automatic behaviors being the key to everything, right? And then that 95% of what we do is not is on automatic and autopilot, so we don't control it. So things like deleting the apps on your phone so that you can go through that scrolling mechanism, deleting them all of the ones that you don't want to be on. And another thing was eating off a smaller plate with a smaller knife and fork. Easy, habitual, autopilot moves that give you fullness. Like, obviously, from a bodybuilding perspective, we know that it was advertised, or not advertised, but it was popularized by a guy called Flex Lewis, who is just absolutely a tank. But what he used to do is, when he was going into his diet prep, he would change from a big knife and fork to a small baby knife and fork, and actually he would eat his oats with his baby's spoon, the colorful ones. And it made that he'd have to take more bites, he'd have to take more spoonfuls, he'd have to take more time on his meals. And if you look at, like, if you had a sandwich in front of you and you said, okay, how many bites could I finish this in, you'd be well aware of how big your mouth can work, and how little bites it would take you to eat a sandwich. And like, you look at people that maintain their body weight naturally, that not the people that have tried and dieted, because they're in a different kettle of fish, but the ones that have had an automatic behavior since day, they're the ones taking small bites and putting their sandwich down. Like, I'd never put a sandwich down between bites. like who does that? But like, these people do, because it's just automatic. Then they'll take a bite and put it down. Like, okay, what are you going to do with that sandwich?
With a sandwich in my hand, like, I don't even sit down sometimes.
I'm not talking like that.
Yeah, literally.
But these are the small things that make everything automatic. And if you're wanting to make things super, super easy for yourself, whatever culture you are, whatever environment you're in, you've got to make things automatic. So, making these small adjustments and not getting massive plates and not eating out of massive bowls just is easier mentally and physically. So everyone just needs to stop using the dessert fork and just start using the teaspoons.
I think it's just being consciously, like, being more aware now. Like, just starting to think about, what's my plate looking like? Like what Em mentioned about vegetables. Have I got vegetables on my plate today? Just simple as that. Like, you may be listening to this and you want to start your fitness journey. Like, that's a great start to your fitness journey. Like, you can just start thinking about what my plate looks like. Can I just change some of these, behaviors that I've had in the past? And then all you do is it becomes automatic, because there's more you're doing every single day. And then suddenly it just becomes quite, like, unconscious, and you're just aware of that stuff. You had a great word of that. Consciously competent, right?
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, become consciously competent, and then you become unconsciously competent. And as long as you've got some, like, accountability mechanisms in there, you can stay unconsciously competent at a good level, which is fantastic. Now, talking of habits that die hard, let's talk about what you would do, Kunal, with your people that say to you, okay, I need something sweet after my meal. Whether it's the palate cleansers, the classic palate cleansers. Oh, they taste horrible, by the way. I was introduced them a couple of weeks ago. Absolutely horrible. And they are basically this mix of, like, seeds and stuff that you taste that just completely wipes out, like, anything nice within your mouth.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Horrible. But they have those, or you then have, like, a sweet after a meal, because that's what you've had for 25 years of your life. What would you recommend, Kunal?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, I've obviously worked with quite a few people who've been in this kind of zone before. One of the things I used to love, like, for example, chocolate, like after my dinner. Yeah, I used to love, like, milk chocolate, dairy milk, the best. And I used to have, like, a whole packet just before, after, like, this was when I was like 13. And I still, like, love chocolate. But then what I decided was whey became that for me, like whey protein, but in a mug cake style. And then I used to have, like, berries on top, etc. And I've done that with quite a few clients, and they're just like, not a lot of people know about the whole mug trick, by the way. Like, not a lot of people know about that. So it's just, you can turn it into, like, a mug cake. And that's been a game changer for a lot of people. But on top of that, if you do want to have something in there, we just got to, let's put it in there. If it's a dark chocolate, and I'd rather you actually control it and have it than always crave it and then not have anything. And then secretly, like, behind my back, you're going to be like, yeah, by the way, unfortunately, I had this and I had that. It's like, I'd rather just tack it and just say, okay, why don't we just include dark chocolate in here? Done. You're not they don't even think you're dieting, because someone in your family may see you having dark chocolate and losing weight. And it's a game changer for them as well, because they're like, what's going on here? This guy can do this, or she can do this. So there's two ways I've done it. It's either, let's say if you like whey, because a lot of people sometimes they start a journey and then they've never had whey protein in their life, and then they get introduced to whey and they're like, oh my God, this tastes amazing, right? It just curbs their sweet tooth and cravings. That's the same thing that happened to me. And on top of that, sometimes people go into like the dark chocolate realm. Anyone who in fitness used to love chocolate are now into like the dark chocolate. Let's be real. I know you love dairy milk beforehand. You don't need to start like talking about I love green and blacks and dark chocolate and lint and that kind of stuff. I know you love dairy milk beforehand, so don't lie to me. So you either include one or the other. If you want to include dairy milk, just realize that it's going to be whatever it is, and it's going to be quite calorific. Same goes with dark chocolate, but at least put it in there and adhere to it, and we should still see fat loss occurring. That's probably my 2 cents to it.
Yeah, I mean, I almost always program in dark chocolate for people. Like it's almost always a state, like it's always an option in someone's introduction to meal plan when they get to teach like what do they need and how much and etc. Because I rather have it in there so people don't perceive it as something bad, because essentially we don't want people to believe that anything that's not on the meal plan is bad for them. But again, teaching people what moderation means, how to take responsibility to track it into, but the way that I do, sometimes when I diet, most of my simple carbs will come from sugar, like sweets. But that would be me filling the criteria for the fibrous carbs, like I eat my vegetables, but then I choose to maybe sacrifice a lot of food volume for something sweeter because I have the allocated macronutrients that allows me to have carbs, like licorice, which I'm a sucker for. So that instead of me having potatoes with my meal, I'll have a salad and my meat, and then I'll have like some licorice afterwards. So
that's good. That's what I was just about to ask for an example there, because I love that too. Yeah, a lot of people would go meat and salad or whatever protein and salad, and then go pepper pigs afterwards, or not pepper pigs. The Marks and Spencer's ones.
Yeah, the veggie Percy. Have you tried those
Percy,
ones?
sorry, Percy the pig.
Oh my God, the veggie Percy are the ones.
Yeah, I had them the other week. Mum's got like 4 packs here that I got given them from Priyanka. Brought them over, and she just like, then when someone gets on it because they've had a taste for it, next minute it came back and the house is filled with Percy pigs.
Yeah, Priyanka's got a sweet tooth as well, isn't
she? Yeah, but I made a mistake because she likes me so much that anything that I say I like, she'll get me, and it'll be on repeat basis every single week. I said to her, look, I really like money, but she just doesn't give me that. But any type of food, like I made the mistake of saying that I like salted caramel. Like the fact that she got me so much salted caramel stuff, I actually don't like salted caramel anymore.
Yeah, it's me as well.
It's way too much.
I actually just want to add, I completely forgot to even say that on my diet. Like Scandinavia, I think Sweden in particular, we're so huge on pick and mix. Like the amount of sugar that people eat in this country, it's ridiculous. And I think we have like the population in the world that eats the most ice cream or something. Like it's really dairy heavy and sugar heavy. So yeah, I mean, Nate, you've been to Sweden. I don't know if we went for pick and mix, but it's just crazy in the store, and it's really dirt cheap as well. Probably like half price of what it would have been in England. And then Sweden is of course more expensive normally. So yeah, but it's sugar. So.
Wow, do you want to hear a fact?
That you'd never paid for pick and mix because you stole it.
No. There's actually the ice cream one, the one Em mentioned. Swedes basically lick their way through a massive 13.5 liters of ice cream per year.
Yeah.
Jesus. Can we just go down the route of just what is the best ice cream? Can we get this ironed out?
I'm not a big ice cream fan. Can I start with that?
No, me neither, but I always would go for a Magnum almond if I would pick mine.
99p flake.
Flake, 99p flake, yeah. It's either the ice cream Mr. Whippy or it's McFlurry. Just the ice cream from McDonald's is absolutely
yeah, McFlurries are good. They're good.
Yeah, McFlurry's decent.
139 calories for the small one, 245 for the big one. Holler at your boy.
139 isn't too bad if you think about it, right?
139 is the same as how I know my calories is just over the same amount as a crunchy or a small double decker. Yeah. It's the same as 1.5 apples. It's the same as 2 slices of breadish. And it's like, if you're looking at changes, you're like, okay, well, would I swap 2 pieces of bread with my breakfast to have a McFlurry on a Friday? Hell yeah.
But remember that with like 2 years ago, what was protein ice creams. There's so many.
Oh, Oppo and Halo Top.
Halo Top. I mean, they work. If you're on a diet, there's so many great substitutes right now. There's like, actually, you can still really enjoy dieting. Obviously, all in moderation, but there are so many substitutes for anything right now that we can't complain that it's a boring way of dieting. We just have to be, again, curious to find solutions and just go, actually, I don't have to go for the Ben and Jerry's. I can settle with a Halo Top for now and realize I can have a whole tub instead of just a couple of spoons, because the equivalent would be in calories. So yeah,
that's 100% so true. And when you get curious in that type of aisle, you can spend heaps of money. But as Connor was saying before about when he was saying about the stuff with the sweet tooth after a meal, the same principle can really apply with that type of stuff as well. It's like, Connor said, well, just have, dark chocolate or put whatever chocolate within your calorie allowance. But obviously we recognize that when you are dieting, the calories may be at a premium. So you will want to slide down the scale, or potentially slide down the scale of things that are more appropriate, like these calorie diet options. If you're I've used, well, a lot of people in my, dieting phases will utilize stuff like Diet Coke after a meal instead of a sweet, or no calorie sugar-free Robinson's juice, or, just keeping it to one meal that you have some sugar or some sweetness afterwards, stuff like that, or the syrups in your coffee, some things that will just be less calories than potentially 2 squares of dark chocolate or 2 squares of dairy milk or whatnot. And unfortunately, they're like some of the trade-offs that you have to make subtly as you get towards the back end of a diet, just so that you can, make sure that you get your nutrients in there, your health quota of vegetables and protein, and just go down that route while still getting those habitual cravings that you may get.
I think I have one client that loves berries as his kind of sweet craving. She has like 100 grams before bed. Obviously, it doesn't work for everyone, but it works for a certain individual. But berries are also great, because you give me blueberries and I'm like all over them. I can probably have like 500 grams of one all in one go.
Raspberry kind of go, which is even cheaper in calories,
Yeah.
True. Blueberries, though. Blueberry man. That's what they call me.
I'm a fresh strawberry guy. But in all cases, when it comes to berries, like I've just pulled up something here, right? It's 400 grams of berries, which is nearly half a kilo, for 208 calories for the frozen stuff.
Muy bien.
Which means that you can get a ton of volume. And if you let's say you were like, oh, I need some sweet after each meal, you could just have 50 grams or 100 grams. It'd still be quite a lot. It'd be at 2 handfuls. And that would be 50 calories or something like that. And that would be crazy. Or you could do it. What I used to do when I'm dieting is that I have a 500 gram bowl of berries in the evening as my last meal of the day. 1 scoop of whey protein, put it over the top. Then you got all the any of the syrups that you want to put on it or whatever, or you can just go down the route of just having berries and then the chocolate whey protein on top. But that's out of curiosity and putting that together and wanting to not compromise on wanting something sweet. You don't have to compromise on those things. And a famous last words from Dr. DeMartini is compromise is just regret waiting to happen. Or so it's regret, or it's one of the other words that are spite or something like that, is just regretting to happen. So anything that you compromise on, you really, you don't want to compromise on anything. You want to find a solution, not just a compromise for a small place of time, because once you take it away, you'll be, in that moment of, oh, I really want it back. And then it'll come back and you'll double over it. You'll go and eat it till the cows come home because of it.
Yeah, definitely. Having a real urge, a real craving, is find a solution to make that work rather than spend so much valuable energy, because there's a lot of energy resisting something as well, right? So finding the solution for how that could work to settle that mind and settle that craving, it's going to last, or it's going to be beneficial in the long run, because you're getting kind of what you want, even if it's a small compromise and it wasn't the Ben and Jerry and the cream on top, but you got something sweet. It curb your craving, and then you still see that you can progress on a weekly basis. So yeah.
All right, did we ever discuss British culture? Mate, did you actually dive deep into Scouse culture? Not even British, let's go Scouse culture.
Well, from outside of Liverpool, let's say that before I get any hate, because I'm not a full-on Scouser. bought from the outskirts of Liverpool or Cheshire or whatever. I, when you're in the culture and you don't really realize it, like, or what that means. I mean, I would say that the things that typify my area are, chippy tea on a Friday, very, very working class. They're very much non-nutritionally educated. And we were speaking about this before, and actually this will be a good way to go into this, is that it's dictated by finance, what outcomes they have when it comes to food, clothing, education, and standards of living. Completely finance. A high percentage of the population around my area and the outskirts will be completely council estates, or depending on the government for aid, and will have, like, if I say that 4 generations of a family have worked in the co-op, one after the other, you know exactly what I mean, right? Like, so someone I went to school with, their grandma was working in the co-op, and then their mum works there, one works in the post office in the co-op, and the other one works on the tills, and then their son works there now after school, and then he's like got a kid at the age of 18, and then that little one's now working there. And like, it's just like the generations go in those small income-based jobs, don't really travel for university, low level of university, low level of college applications, and probably not particularly that educated. A lot, probably 2 out of my class of 60 people at primary school probably went to university.
You being one of them, right?
Yeah, just about. But I think from a financial perspective, it dictates a lot of the things, and a lot of the families would probably rather have chicken dippers from frozen foods or farm foods, and give their son a new pair of shoes for school.
They bond over food, right? That's what it is.
It's like the Asian culture. It's like it's given to them, so then therefore that's what they know. And because it's, out of a frozen packet, there's no like time spent in the kitchen. That mum's come home from working 12 hours on an Asda superstore, and then been like they left the kids alone when they're younger. I know plenty of parents when I was younger, when I was hanging around with the kids, their mum and dad would leave them and then they'd have to come around to our house, because they were doing 12 or 14-hour shifts, both of them. And then they come home and they chicken dippers in the and frozen chips into the oven, and then they would then serve them for dinner, and that would be what they were given. No chance, no opportunity to look at fresh ingredients. I think one of my friends the first time he had vegetables was around my house, and he was like 12, like, no joke. So
really cool.
that's type of you do get those families, unfortunately, and there's quite a high percentage in this area. But Em wanted to speak about budget and then dieting, or eating healthier foods, or healthy-esque.
Well, how we would address working with someone who potentially was on a very strict budget and potentially cannot afford to buy fresh produce and a lot of supplements and everything else. Like, how would do you guys want to go first, and how you would potentially structure if you would do anything differently to help them? Because obviously we have to meet the clients where they are, so that we can actually help them, not just to give them a plan and be like, cool, you figure it out. So how do we create plans that work for people that might be on a budget but still really has a strong why they want to change? They just can't. There is restrictions to how much they can actually afford to put into it.
Yeah.
In terms of budget, they obviously have the will and the passion and the drive, but everything else.
For me, it would be things like, let's say, for blueberries, or these things are quite pricey when you think about it, right? You'd go for like frozen instead. You look for substitutes, like even vegetables, you may have to go for frozen mixed instead. And I think it's always looking for those. Even eggs, like if you don't want to go for free range and you want to go for the cheapest option, then you'll have to go for the cheapest option, because it's free range costs you £1 or 2 extra. Then you have to do that. Same goes with maybe if you've got bread in the program, you may have to look for similar macros, but you have to go for the cheapest bread. So then you may compromise, let's say, quality or organic over just having that instead. So I've always, like, even for like blueberries, for example, with me, it's always been frozen. It's £2 for 400 grams. Whereas I can get the 200-gram ones for, it's like 250, right? So if you can make that swap going forward, and there's plenty of swaps out there, to be honest. Like, if you go on like dark chocolate, the Tesco one is a lot cheaper than the rest of them. So you can, if you've got dark chocolate in your plan, you can go for that instead of, let's say, the Lindt that is 90%, and that costs you £1.50 extra. So I think it's just going to be a lot of, like, not trial and error, but just looking at what's the cheapest option and being okay with that. For example, with eggs, if it's not free range or whatever, cool, I'm okay with this 90p one instead of paying 110 or 150.
Yeah.
That's probably my piece of advice.
But just to follow up on that frozen stuff, actually, I think a lot of frozen stuff is actually more nutritious because it's been frozen straight from the crops, right? So whereas we think that buying fresh is always better, sometimes actually buying the frozen stuff it's going to give you more nutrients. So I think that goes for most people as well. It's like, actually, you might want to have some of your vegetables lying in the freezer, knowing that actually it's also very quick for you to pick them up, and also if you're going to be meal prepping, there's going to be Tupperwares in your fridge. And if you're house sharing, you're not going to have a lot of space. So maybe that freezer will be the thing where you actually have space to have things ready available when it's come down to meal prep time. So yeah.
100%. I at university, I was budgeting off like maybe 22 pound a week on food. Battered eggs taste nicer anyway, but I'm joking. But I think the easy ones is that per gram for like protein sort of things, like whey protein, and getting a cheap whey protein is actually really, really cheap in comparison to like 30 grams of protein in chicken. I think it's like, it probably costs about 25p a scoop for a whey protein powder. So you're already cutting probably costs of 1/5 if you're going to compare. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do that at every single meal, but we're just looking at that from a cost cutting perspective. Small things like oats. It doesn't matter whether they're from Scottish oats or the Tesco's own, that you get the biggest bag for the least amount. Non-microwavable rice versus the big massive packs of rice. Cooking it by yourself will always give you better return on that. I think that something like, if you're eating simple carbohydrate sources, like Cocoa Pops are fantastic, and they are super cheap, especially if you get the not Cocoa Pops ones.
Yeah, the Tesco Pops.
The value ones.
Yeah. Popsco. And I think that the biggest wins is the frozen section. You can get like 10 frozen chicken breasts for like £2. You could even get breaded ones, even if you could fit them into your calories, that would be of that nature. And always look for the deals as well. Like, if corn's on offer, you can get like corn pieces. And because they're so voluminous in like food, they can spread them across a few meals and they last massively. And I think all things in all, things like batch cooking, eating very similar meals will save you a lot of the thing as well. You could even go down the route of chicken breast is quite expensive. You could buy a whole chicken, or buy couple of whole chickens and then cut it all up. So like one day you could have like a couple of drumsticks, 2 thighs, 2 breasts. You got 6 meals there, or 5 meals in a whole chicken. That could be £3, which means that it could be 50p a meal for protein, which is fantastic. And yeah, you'll have to do some playing around with calories, but to be honest, for most people, if you just show up and have some protein, you'll be okay. And then and then the extras on the frozen stuff is just make sure that you've got plenty there to go off, the vegetables. And I've always used frozen stuff. It's probably only in the last, since Barcelona, really, maybe, which is only this year. Started using everything fresh just because I preferred it that way, and I had time to cook. Whereas before that, everything was either frozen or it was prepped as made and then frozen afterwards. And then on bread, the whiter, the nastier, the better it tastes anyway. So get that 40p loaf from Tesco or as the value and enjoy it, because it's the best stuff going.
Yeah, don't go for sourdough.
Yeah, and nobody's got time for that.
Yeah, and also obviously go to the section where they do put things out on sale, because you can buy things very cheaply and put it in the freezer if you can't cook it that same day. I mean, that's what I do most of my protein right now, because in Sweden it's crazy expensive here. So I will always go to that section, and there will always be something that I can pick up. Yeah, and instead of chicken breast, I'm eating shitloads of chicken mince, which seems to be the winner right now. So Yeah.
I used to do that too. You just go to that yellow section, obviously less calories in the yellow section too.
It's reduced calories.
Yeah. And I used to often pick up a joint of beef, and that was like, maybe £7 for a joint of beef, and you cook it on a Sunday and it'll last you till 2 meals a day for 4 or 5 days, and it'd be like £4 or £5, and you're going to get like at least 15-20 grams of protein from that, and then just make up the rest from your wheys, your eggs, and your other yogurt. That's what you haven't mentioned as well, is that big massive tubs of yogurt. The cheaper ones, don't be getting no Skyr, don't be getting no Alpro, don't be getting no Farge. Just get the cheap nasty stuff, because it's the same. It comes out the same cow. It's just it's the same stuff to some degree.
Yeah, we can talk about that another time, quality of food as well. But yeah, any last final words?
Gyms may reopen very, very shortly. I think there's going to Parliament, having a discussion on that on Monday. So hold tight, clients. Let's hope, let's pray, fingers crossed, that there's some good news, and by next pod we may be like, yeah, gyms are reopened. So we'll see.
Then we have to, yeah. Oh, that's amazing, because I'm coming back next week. So I'm ready. I'm ready for the gyms to be open.
Yeah, let's hope it. Otherwise, it's gonna be 10 days after that anyway. So it's either one or the other.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys.